Good morning, everybody. I am absolutely thrilled to be here and speaking at the Voices into Africa conference. I think this is an important milestone in developing the speaking on this continent and developing speakers around the world. So I want to talk today about a topic that I'm really passionate about. And I feel that as speakers, we need to begin developing, we need to begin growing, we need to begin working on. So let me first start off by talking a little bit about my background. And I want to find out, first of all, what animal do you think represents the mood that you are in today, or the mood that you are in now, or how you are feeling right now? I want you to sort of to take a moment, reflect, and maybe just put in the chat an animal that represents your mood, your feeling, or dare you even say your emotions. And I'm going to try and look at the chat, and Carl, perhaps you can help me just so that I can also deliver this presentation. Okay, polar bear, thank you, Charlotte. Fish eagle, elephant, I see a tiger there, I see a cheetah. Now, these are all wonderful animals, and hopefully these are all animals that represent this continent. But if you look at the characteristics of that particular animal, why does it tap into that particular feeling that you have? And I'll expound on this a little bit later. You know, when I was young, that handsome young man that you can see over there, my parents were very instrumental in terms of me beginning to develop this thing called feelings. And I remember my father, for example, would say, Derek, if you want to feel at your best, you have to look your best. It wasn't just look your best. So there I am, a young man, I'm wearing a tie, I'm wearing shoes. And by the way, he would say, your shoes will always tell people in what direction that you are going. And so that's just an aside. That's something that I've taken seriously all the way up till today, the shoes that you wear. But he was really about how you look can really have an impact on how you feel inside, and how you represent yourself on the outside is actually a reflection of what's in the inside and how you're feeling. And again, as I've started delving into this topic, particularly of emotional intelligence, I look back to those days, because sometimes I wonder, why did you start speaking about such a topic, or why does it resonate with you in such a way? And it is a photo like this where my father, and recalling how my father or my mother would tell me, Derek, what you look on the outside is a representation of what is on the inside. So let's maybe fast forward a few years, and I can admit here in front of all of you good people that I love the superhero genre. I love superheroes. I wait for the next Marvel comic universe movie to come out with bated breath. And I don't watch it on a little screen at home. I go to the movie theater, I buy a large tub of popcorn, I get my Coca-Cola, and I sit there and I enjoy it in massive 3D or sometimes 4D. And again, quick aside, how many people have seen Wolverine and Deadpool? Fantastic. Anyway, any MCU fans out there, any superhero fans out there, any people who enjoy that genre, or who's your favorite superhero? Again, you can just pop that into the comments. It'd be interesting to see. Actually, my favorite superhero is Superman. And again, Superman, I don't know why I like Superman. Maybe that's the original comic book hero that I started watching, or certainly reading the comic books about. But I've always wanted to have a superpower. Actually, when I was young, the superpower that I wanted to have was to be invisible. To be invisible for a number of reasons. You know, I wanted to be invisible because maybe my parents had told me to leave the room because we were going to have an adult conversation. And so I wanted to be a fly on the wall. What are you discussing? Or maybe I wanted to be invisible when my sister was on the phone talking to God knows who. I wanted to eavesdrop on that conversation. Or even regretfully, be invisible in school, particularly when I was younger. I wanted to sit at the back of the classroom, not be called upon by any of the teachers, and just hide. Well, I mean, look at where I am today. This is the most visible, dare I say, of careers, certainly as a speaker. I have all of your eyes on me. Everything about me is being scrutinized, what I'm wearing, my background, everything. There is nowhere for me to hide. And for those of you who speak in front of live audiences, you know exactly what that is like, to have every single eye on you and to be aware of small things, a piece of lint on your dress or on your shirt. But you know what? That superpower that I wanted to have to be invisible, today, I use that, or rather, that superpower has translated to being visible for the right reasons. Yeah, visible for the right reasons, because I know I have a wonderful message. Charlotte yesterday was talking about the value that you bring. I know I have a fantastic message, all right? I know that what I talk about is important, and it has an impact on people's lives, and particularly this one, being able to tap into emotional intelligence, or there, again, I'll use that word, feelings. And by the way, that is a superpower. Being able to tap into your feelings, to know what is going on in this noggin of yours. Just as you have told me, this particular animal represents how you're feeling right now. That, ladies and gentlemen, is a superpower. I'm not going to expand on this just in the interest of time. It's a visual, obviously, of two people who are reflected as superheroes. But in the spirit of all of our previous speakers using acronyms, I decided I'm going to throw these in, and I do expand on these, where I talk about CASH, the CASH formula, certainly for success, or the CASH formula in emotional intelligence, where the K stands for knowledge. So I think that's what you're going to get today. A little bit of knowledge on this particular topic. A is for attitude. So for those of you who say, check your feelings at the door, you've heard people say that, or really it's about, not giving into your feelings, I'm going to say reframe the A, which is attitude. And then the S is for skill. Hopefully, at the end of this brief conversation I'm going to have with you, you are going to look at this as a skill that you can develop, a skill. The fact that your favorite footballer can bend a ball around a wall. Yes, he may have been born with that innate ability, but your Ronaldos and Messis of the world is about practice, 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 and practice. Okay? The 10,000 steps that Malcolm Gladwell was talking about. And so this emotional intelligence is a skill that you can develop. And if you don't, you can actually fall off. And then it becomes an H, a habit, a success work habit. And I love talking about habits. I'm going to hold my horses, though, on that particular thing. So CASH, knowledge, attitude, skill, habit. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I want you to think of the best, let's say best boss, best teacher, best mentor. Heck, if you can't even think of a boss, a teacher, or a mentor, maybe the best colleague that you have ever worked with. I sort of want you just to think about that person. Maybe if you have a pen and paper, you can jot their initials down. I want you to start thinking about the situations when you interacted with this best boss, teacher, mentor, or indeed colleague. And as you start thinking about this particular person, I want you to maybe just jot down 3 ways in which this person made you feel. Now note, it's not what they did, but how they made you feel, or make you feel. Perhaps you're working with someone right now who's like that. How do they make you feel? One word to describe what this best boss, teacher, mentor, or colleague makes you feel. And please, if you don't mind, if you could throw that into the chat, I would love to get a feel for what you are thinking right now. And you can just put in one. I mean, I've asked you for three, but you can throw in one. All right, driven. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Tim. Heard. Fantastic. Inspired. That always comes up. Seen. Absolutely. Valued. Able. Confident. Intelligent. Wonderful. Thank you so much for that. Now, I'm going to take you to the dark side. I want you to think of the most challenging. Let's be charitable. Worst, but I'm going to be charitable with my language. The most challenging boss, teacher, mentor, colleague that you have ever had either the pleasure or maybe displeasure of interacted with. Now, again, I know sometimes this brings up PTSD. You know, what do they say? People don't quit jobs, they quit managers. But as you think about this person who was challenging to work with or for, what are the three words that you could use to describe how this person made you feel? And remember, not what they did, but how they made you feel. And just throw that in the chat. Overlooked. Oh, stupid. Shut up. That's terrible. Yes, imagine somebody making you feel that, of all people. Foolish, unhappy. Thank you, Mpo. All right. Small. I mean, we can do this exercise all day. Now, as you reflect on these two different bosses, if you will, that I have asked you to think about and how they made you feel, I want you to reflect on if this exercise was being done and people were talking about you. What did you do? And I'm being specific with this particular graphic that I have here. What did you do to make someone feel appreciated this week? To make them feel driven, great, happy, amazing, some of the things that you had put in. Or perhaps you did something that made somebody feel stupid or small or unhappy. What did you do to make somebody feel appreciated this week? And for purposes of this exercise, I'm not talking about the relationship that you might have with your mother, which hopefully is a fantastic relationship. So every time you see your mother, you make her feel great. Every time you see your brother, you make him feel great. Every time you see your best friend, you make him feel amazing. But those people that perhaps you see at work, the event organizer that you had to deal with this week as you are setting up your next talk, the professional. In fact, this talk is geared to the relationship that you have in a professional capacity. What did you do to make that person feel good? And by the way, if they made you feel a certain way, were you able to manage that feeling of being made to feel small and make them feel great? Oh, we're really diving into this, ladies and gentlemen. So here's how this is a loose definition for me of emotional intelligence. And by the way, you type emotional intelligence into Google, you'll get as many definitions as there are hits. But how you show up determines the way people feel. And by showing up, this showing up, should have put it in quotes, is literally how do you walk into a room and say good morning to people? Do you even say good morning? You know, I've been in situations, I've worked in the corporate world. You walk into a room and you say good morning to somebody and their response is, what's good about it? I mean, I distinctly remember the person who would give that response and how it made me feel. And if we continue to use that example, all right, so you're in an office, somebody walks in and you say good morning, it's a Monday morning, and yeah, you know, they had a rough weekend, but their response is, what's good about it? And then you sort of feel a certain way. And then you maybe go into the kitchen, all right? And you go to make yourself your morning coffee or a water cooler to get some water. And then, you know, somebody asks you, oh, where is that file that you were looking at on Friday? And you'd be surprised, a response like this might come out of your mouth. Are you in charge of the files? Who sent you to come after me? You're not the boss of me. And I mean, you know, I could give any sort of response. The fact is that a lot of times how we feel, and particularly if we're not tapped into why we feel that way, leads us to make decisions, to act in certain ways, to perform in ways that have a detrimental effect on our relationships. By the way, as a speaker, okay, this is me knowing my audience. As a speaker, as you stand up here, virtually or in person, are you aware of what you are feeling right now? I'll be honest. Before I started this talk, knowing that I'm on a platform with some of the most accomplished speakers on this continent, I felt a little challenged. Okay? It's a little bit of imposter syndrome going on, right? But what I was able to do is take that particular feeling and then say to myself, well, why are you feeling that way? What is it about that? And what can you do to help you make a better performance? And by the way, this is now the second part of this particular caption that I have. And the way that you feel determines the extent to which either that person will engage or how you'll perform. You know, to me, I'm going to use a word called self-awareness. And this is a word that's bandied a lot about. But to me, self-awareness is the ability to know how I'm feeling at any particular time, and whether that feeling is a strong emotion or an unhealthy emotion for whatever reason. Somebody might have spoken to me badly. I might be in a situation where I feel a little threatened, but able to take that particular feeling. And for purposes of this conversation, I'm using the words feeling and emotion and mood interchangeably. But use it then to help me and say, well, what do you want out of this situation? I want to feel confident. I want to feel on top of the world. I want to feel like I have everybody in the palm of my hand. So then what do I need to do in order to feel that way? I've recognized I have that feeling that is not great. I feel a little bit irritated. You know, for example, here in Kenya, as I'm sure in many of the countries that you come from, certainly the countries that I've been to that are represented here, South Africa and Zim and other places, you have the, we call them matatus. I'm trying to think of the word. The public transportation vehicles, right? And the way they're driven here, as I've also observed in other countries, they're driven by people who I think don't have a valid driver's license. And by the way, anytime I get on the road, invariably, one of those public service vehicles, we call them matatus here, is going to jump a light or cut me off in traffic, all right? Or throw an obscenity at me, whatever the infraction is going to be. And this used to be my reaction, all right? I would, you know, throw that obscenity back at that person, all right? Or even deviate from where I was going to follow that vehicle so that I can cut them off and show them two can play that game. I was feeling irritated, I was feeling angry, and that was my response. Today, being, shall I say, a more emotionally intelligent speaker, I take that anger, I still feel it, still feel that irritation, but I convert it to something akin to empathy. So I feel sorry for this guy. He had to wake up at a ridiculously early time in the morning, so he's a little irritated, and that's why he drives like that. Or his boss takes half his salary. Or indeed, he doesn't have a valid driver's license, so I can forgive him for driving like that. This tapping into your feelings and being able to manage, perceive, control them, use them to great effect impacts pretty much everything in terms of relationships, in terms of speaking, in terms of everything that we do, particularly as professionals. Let aside our personal lives. I love this quote. Can you see this? I think you can. We are not thinking machines who feel, we are feeling machines who think. Antonio Damasio. Love that. We are not thinking machines who feel. We are feeling machines who think. All right? Ponder on that for a while, ladies and gentlemen. All right. Question for you. How many cells are there in the human body? How many cells are there in the human body? All right? Our hair, our skin, our blood. How many cells are there in the human body? Does anyone want to attempt to answer that question and put it in the chat? Lots. Yeah, lots. How many lots? Thank you. Lots, for sure. So, I've asked this question before: millions, trillions, billions, lots, right? But each of those individual cells, if you had a powerful electron microscope, right, and you were to drill down to the structure of each of those individual cells, all right, you would actually look and see that each of those cells is not static. They're moving. They are vibrating. So think about it. You are made up of lots of cells, millions, billions, trillions. I don't know if that number has been quantified. And each of those is vibrating at a particular speed. Now, here's the rub. I believe that each of those cells, as they're vibrating, so they're giving off energy. Let me do this in order. They're giving off a certain amount of energy, anabolic, positive, or negative. Actually, and the reason they're giving off that energy is because of your particular mood, feeling, or emotion. And you know that. People these days bandy that word around. Somebody brings good energy. They have good energy. You've seen it. Somebody walks into a room, the room lights up. Great energy. Somebody walks into a room where there are people leave, and they don't want to be around that person because of energy. And even that energy is translated across this virtual space that we're in. Some of you amazing speakers from yesterday, somebody like Chantal, that energy is you're just bathed in it when she's speaking. And all of you, amazing speakers, right? So my point is, if there is a transfer of that particular amount of energy, then it is incumbent on us to make sure that we are managing it in a certain way and be aware of it. By the way, it is something that we can be aware of or we can be unaware of. And we're unaware why people react a certain way to us because we haven't tapped into, number one, how we are feeling, and then how we can channel that particular emotion or energy to help us and help the people. So that's a book that I recommend. It's called The Molecules of Emotion. It's by Candice Pert, if you can't see. A fantastic book to read if you want more on this particular topic. Molecules of Emotion. So this emotional intelligence, it's about managing, first of all, being aware of. So we tap in, what animal am I like today? Managing it. And by the way, it's not just managing us, it's also managing the emotions of other people. And I think I'm going to give a certain demonstration of that just a little bit later as I wrap up my talk. Yeah? It's a skill, ladies and gentlemen, that is crucial. The statistics are there. The people who are successful in whatever sphere. As a speaker, think about it. Managing the jitters on a stage of 2,000 people, or some of the situations some of you have talked about where you weren't sure if this was going the right way. Absolutely vital. So, as Kyle had mentioned, you may or may not have caught it. One of the other things that I do in my life is that I'm an actor. So I've been on, a couple of TV shows that people may or may not recognize, certainly here in Kenya, on various platforms. And one of the things about, this is the practical application of something like this. One of the things, particularly on a set, and you can, I don't think that's a foreign concept to anybody. So you have a set, you have the actors, you have crew, you have production, you have logistics, you have all these different people who come together to produce a TV show or a movie You have all these moving parts and different people and different personalities. And oh my goodness, I thought the corporate world was difficult in terms of managing emotions. They are, I think, possibly being on a TV set, certainly in my experience, is where you have to work very hard to deal with all these different personalities and different emotions and how people make you feel. And of course, I'm not going to go into specifics because of the time that we have. But I want you to think about those of you who are in, maybe you're working and you're also doing speaking, or like Chantal was telling us yesterday, you have to deal with these different personalities, different speakers, different organizers, and things like that. And I'm going to ask you this question. So can you build the perfect team? So a team could be you, the event organizer, or the corporate that has hired you to come and speak. Or the team is all of us here today. In fact, Google set out on this request, the company Google, they set out on a quest to build the perfect team, or what were the ingredients of a perfect team. So they had a lot of interesting findings. I'm going to share you the top 3 things that they found. So this is number 3. Members of this team, okay, have structure and they have clarity. So there's a structure to their day, there's a clarity in the mission they're trying to do, what they're trying to achieve. So that's number 3. Number 2 was team members have meaning, or they feel that they have a meaning. I'm contributing to a larger cause. It's a bigger project in mind, whatever that larger cause is. Do you know what the number 1 thing was? Actually, you know, I think I have a few more minutes. What do you think was the number 1 ingredient to building the perfect team? Just throw it in the chat. What do you think was the number 1 ingredient to building the perfect team? Trust, thank you. Excuse me. Communication, thank you. Emotional intelligence. Thank you, Mary. Empathy, individuality, feeling bad. Somebody said it. Somebody said it. Well, at least this is what they found. Psychological safety. There you go. And by the way, all those things are important as well. And in fact, play a part in this thing called psychological safety. So psychological safety, and again, the various definitions: interpersonal risk-taking, the ability to have your feelings validated, your feelings. I feel a certain way, and I'm able to express it without, excuse me, without repercussions, being humiliated, being ostracized, okay? Being looked at as the other, being looked as somebody who is rocking the boat, not a team player, and so on and so forth. And there are examples of various organizations around the world where top leaders especially have used this particular skill, which is part of emotional intelligence, psychological safety, and being able to provide it for their teams in order to get their teams to perform and indeed build that magical, perfect team. And without emotional intelligence, psychological safety does not exist. And I can go into that in more detail in another conversation. And by the way, it's everybody's responsibility. This talk was about growing and leading. We're all leaders here. As a speaker, you're a leader. This is a leadership position. Standing up here and speaking about a topic is a leadership responsibility, and it's everybody's responsibility to provide that sort of an environment. I don't know if you can see that. That is a plane representing the company Boeing. And I think most of you may be familiar with the troubles Boeing has undergone over the last decade, shall we say. I mean, starting with those disastrous airline crashes, Malaysia, Ethiopia. I actually lost friends on that particular flight. That flight flies from Nairobi to Addis. Been on that flight many times there, but for the grace of God. And all of it led to how Boeing was being managed, right? And as these stories come out and these inquiries and stories are being told, managers would say things and they would be sidelined. they will be told, shut up, get on board, let's get this done. We have a production quota to hit. We don't want to hear anything about safety issues. And look at the disastrous consequences. All right. So, I mean, I want you to think about the environments that you operate in. Okay. Are you providing that sort of psychological safety, which is a real world application of this topic that we're talking about of emotional intelligence? Okay. Managing, perceiving, and understanding the things that are going on in here helps you to make better decisions. And by the way, if you make particular decisions over time, people say that is how you behave. Okay, my decision to follow somebody who had violated a traffic rule and roll down the window and yell at them was how I was behaving. I can't even believe I used to behave like that, right? But that was a decision I was making, and that ultimately was affecting my performance. So there's your decisions affect your behavior, and that behavior ultimately affects your performance. All right, fun fact. Did you know that zebras do not get ulcers? Yes, sir. Zebras do not get ulcers. Let me illustrate. So, you know, the life of a zebra, right? I actually don't live too far from the national park here in Nairobi. So, you know, if you go to the national park and you observe a zebra, let's just take a particular zebra, right? It is early in the morning. It's having its breakfast, chewing on that wonderful grass. As it's having its breakfast, another predator is also looking for its morning meal. So out of the bush, let's say, comes charging a lion. Right. Now, for the next 15 minutes, this particular zebra we're talking about is under the most intense duress. You're literally running for your life, right? Now, let's just imagine that this lion gets its cousin, okay? Do you know the zebra has a very interesting mechanism? It actually, okay, so the chase is over, the lion got its cousin, the zebra resets its mechanism. This is the only way that I can explain it, to completely forget that it was like a few minutes ago, it was being chased for its very life. And it goes back to resume its meal as if it had just been rudely interrupted by somebody saying, excuse me. And it completely forgets. It's not looking over its shoulder saying, oh, is that no lion that's going to charge out? No. Now, let's imagine this happens 3 times a day, assuming that the zebra eats 3 square meals. So breakfast, it eats, it runs for its life, it survives, it comes back. Lunchtime, it's eating, again, it has to run for its life, comes back, resumes eating, forgets that it was being chased. Dinner time, does the same thing. Put yourselves in the hooves of a zebra. How long before you say, I can't live this life. I am checking out. Every time I sit to have a meal, I have to run for my life. And that's why you as a human being, if you survive day 1, would probably start developing peptic ulcers. All right? So think about the situations we've been in, particularly say over the last 3 or 4 years when our lives were irrevocably changed by a black swan of an event, right? The way we do business. The number one thing my clients would always tell me is, Derek, we need you to come and help deal with our team members who need resilience. They're going through burnout, they're going through stress, having to work from home, and everything that went through that particular era. Thank God. All right. But you know what? That particular skill that the zebra has of being able to reset its mechanism, as human beings, I think that's something that we can learn from to deal with the challenges that everyday life has us. Or that you come up on stage and there's a speech that you prepare, there's a presentation that you deliver, and there's a presentation you wish that you deliver. And as speakers, you all know this. Once this is over, I'll go back and why did this happen? What went wrong? Why did I say this? I can't believe I forgot this. All right? I think in all of our careers, this only helps us, and developing this type of empathy for ourselves can only make us better, or developing resilience. And again, all these terms, empathy, resilience, these are all parts of emotional intelligence. Now, I just want us to think about, as I'm almost wrapping up, again, think about the people that you interact with on a daily basis in a professional world. Whose behavior is like your best? So remember, the best person made you feel happy, excited, motivated, driven, all the things that you wrote about. So think about somebody that you deal with on a regular basis in the professional world whose behavior is like your best. And are there people who perhaps their behavior is like your worst, the worst person that you ever had to deal with? And as you think about these different people that you interact with, the person who is at their best and the person you just dread having to pick up that phone call from them, all right? Whose fault is it? And when I say whose fault is it? So this person who makes you feel a certain way, a strong emotion, an unhealthy emotion, and you feel like, I can't believe I have to deal with this person. Whose fault is it? Now, that's a rhetorical question. When I say whose fault is it? Because it's not the fault of that person who winds you up, who cuts you off in traffic, okay? Or the audience that makes you feel small or laughs at you, whatever it is. Actually, it's your fault. You are in charge of how you feel, okay? You are in charge of managing. First of all, perceiving, managing, and then using that information. By the way, the emotion is just data, to help me become more productive or more empathetic or more resilient, a better performer. It's a fantastic book by Jocko Willing called, I'm having a senior moment here. Well, it's akin to whose fault is it? It's your fault. Everything is your fault. I think that's what it's called. In other words, nobody can take away that power from you or should be allowed to. I remember an ex that I used to deal with, and I would come home, say, on a Friday night, all right, or a Friday evening. We've both been hard at work, and we are sitting down and we're maybe selecting a movie to watch on Friday evening. And of course, me having the superior taste in movies, TV shows, would say, well, honey, we're watching this tonight. And 5 minutes into this TV show, I see her on the phone texting God knows who, and that would drive me to the wall, literally. I mean, the arguments would be epic just based over that. All right? You know how you spend a weekend with somebody who's supposedly the most important person in your life, and you spend it passing each other like strangers at a supermarket? It was literally that bad. And then, you know what? Come to realize, I was letting her make me feel this way. It wasn't the action of her doing whatever it was that was driving me up the wall. It was me having to manage my anger or irritation or unhealthy emotion. All right, folks, what is it costing you not to be able to manage, perceive, and use those emotions to get the best out of you and the people that you work with? A long-haul flight from Johannesburg to Amsterdam. If the radar on that flight is 1 degree off, every 60 miles, that plane will be 1 mile off course. So those 5,000 miles between Joburg and Amsterdam, if every 60 miles, the plane is 1 mile off, I think it'll make a complete 360 and land in Joburg instead of landing in Amsterdam. I mean, I'm using that as an example to say that it's like these, you know, the scales. Maybe it's a little bit this day, and then a little bit tomorrow, and then a little bit tomorrow. But overall, day after day, week after week, month after month, look at how those scales become imbalanced. Start working on these skills to help you to manage your relationships and to be the better speaker that you need to be. So I'm going to leave you with 3 questions. These are my 3 takeaways. Number 1, this business particularly is about helping people buy you. They buy you when you're up here on stage. They buy you literally and figuratively when you are negotiating, discussing contracts, or they're interested in you coming to talk to them. Okay. And what can you commit to, certainly as a result of this conversation that we've had, that you can start working on to develop this skill? And yes, make it your superpower. Okay. My favorite quote. We've all heard it. We all know it. It's Maya Angelou, but it speaks directly to some of the things I've been talking about. People will forget what you said. They might forget what you did, but they will never forget how you made them feel. That's certainly one side of the equation. Okay. But it's also about making yourself feel good. It's about taking a difficult, unhealthy emotion that we face every day, fear, anger, particularly as a speaker, and making yourself feel great. And then finally, this from Aristotle. Anybody can become angry. That's easy. Anger is an emotion that many of us are quick to get. All right? But to become angry with the right person, to the right degree, at the right time, now that, and I may have changed his quote a little bit, that is emotional intelligence. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.